Dear friend, now in the dusty clockless hours of the town, when the streets lie black and steaming in the wake of the water trucks, and now when the drunk and the homeless have washed up in the lee of walls and alleys or abandoned lots, and cats go forth high-shouldered and lean in the grim perimeters about. Now in these soot-blacked brick or cobbled corridors where light wire shadows make a Gothic harp of cellar doors, no soul shall walk save you. What's the tone of that opening sentence? How'd you describe the language there, Ivy?
It's really like dark, but in like a smooth way. Like I feel like this is very like flowy and like almost reminds me of like if you're smearing like frosting on a cake, but in like it's like the words are negative, but the flow is very smooth, as opposed to it being negative and also in your face and jagged and like hard sounding.
Right. So like Outer Dark is, I mean, the book is Gothic in every way, and there's always ominous. I don't know that this is necessarily there's darkness to it, but there is this interesting liquidity, a liquid quality, like the river that it's next to.
I was just going to say it has a very like foreboding feel to it.
Yeah. Also, as opposed to Outer Dark, where there's almost no warmth, right? The speaker starts off addressing us, dear friend, right? We'll talk about who is being addressed there. Old stone walls unplumbed by weathers, lodged in their stray fossil bones, limestone scarabs rucked in the floor of this once inland sea. Thin dark trees through yon iron palings where the dead keep their own small metropolis. Curious marble architecture, stele and obelisk and cross and little rain-worn stones where names grow dim with years. Earth packed with samples of the casket maker's trade, the dusty bones and rotted silk, the deathware stained with carrion. Out there under the blue lamplight in the trolley tracks run on to darkness, curved like cock heels in the pinchbeck dusk. One of the things that I'm struck with by this prologue is, I think the first time I read it, I was like, it's like eating something, I use this metaphor, very, very rich. I didn't know what many of these words mean. I don't think you always have to. The sounds are incredible. The sounds are just glorious, musical, curved like cock heels in the pinchbeck dusk. And then the verbs, right? The steel leaks back the day's heat. You can feel it through the floors of your shoes. Past those corrugated warehouse walls, down little sandy streets where blown-out autos sulk on the pedestals of cinder block. Through warrens of sumac and pokeweed and withered honeysuckle giving onto the scored clay banks of the railway. Gray vines coiled leftward in this northern hemisphere. What winds them shapes the dog whelk shell. If you know anything about iambic pentameter, bum 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 bum, what winds them shapes the dog whelk shell, right? Weeds sprouted from cinder and brick. A steam shovel reared in solitary abandonment against the night sky. Cross here, by frog rails and fish plates, where engines cough like lions in the dark of the yard. To a darker town, past lamps stoned blind, past smoking oblique shacks and china dogs and painted tires where dirty flowers grow. Down pavings rent with ruin, the slow cataclysm of neglect, the wires that belly pole to pole across the constellations hung with kite string, with bolos composed of hobbled bottles or the toys of smaller children. Encampment of the damned, which, by the way, could be a phrase from Outer Dark, right? Mm-hmm. There's going to be a twist to all this, though. Precincts, perhaps, where dripping lepers prowl unbelled. You begin to have all these references to medieval times, right? At a time when leprosy was endemic and incurable. Lepers were forced to wear these bells, right? So you didn't get too close, and so. But these are medieval images, and that continues. Above the heat and the improbable skyline of the city, a brass moon has risen, and the clouds run before it like watered ink. The buildings stamped against the night are like a rampart to a farther world forsaken, old purposes forgot. Countrymen come from miles with the earth clinging to their shoes and sit all day like mutes in the marketplace. The city constructed on no known paradigm, a mongrel architecture reading back through the works of man and a brief delineation of the aberrant, disordered, and mad. A carnival of shapes upreared on the river plain that has dried up the sap of the earth for miles about. Factory walls of old dark brick, tracks of a spur line grown with weeds, a course of foul blue drainage where dark filaments of nameless dross sway in the current, the panes among the glass and the rusted window frames. There is a moon-shaped rictus in the street lamp's globe where a stone has gone, and from this aperture there drifts down through the constant helix of aspiring insects a faint and steady rain of the same forms burnt and lifeless. Here at the creek mouth, the fields run onto the river, the mud delted and bearing out of its rich alluvial harbored bones and dread waste a rack of cratewood and condoms and fruit rinds. I love this list that comes. These are all the cast-off items. These are all the things that are used and then nobody wants. People think they're disgusting. In fact, right? If you've ever been wherever, right, in the city and seen like a used condom, you're just like, didn't need to see that, right? I mean, but all of these items are this. Cratewood, condoms, fruit rinds, old tins and jars, and ruined household artifacts that rear from the fecal mire of the flats like landmarks in the trackless veil of dementia praecox. A world beyond all fantasy, malevolent and tactile and dissociate. The blown light bulbs like shorn polyps, semi-translucent and skull-colored, bobbing blindly down, and spectral eyes of oil, and now and again the beached and steeking forms of fetal humans bloated like young birds, moon-eyed and bluish or stale gray. Beyond in the dark, the river flows in a sluggard ooze towards southern seas, running down out of the rain-flattened corn and petty crops and river-loam gardens of up-country land-keepers, grading along like bone dust, a freight with the past, dreams dispersed in the water some way, nothing ever lost. Houseboats ride at their hawsers. The neat mud along the shore lies ribbed and slick like the cavernous flitch of some beast hugely foundered, and beyond the country rolls away to the south and the mountains, where hunters and woodcutters once slept in their boots by the dying light of their thousand fires, and went on, old Teutonic forebears with eyes incandesced by the visionary light of a massive rapacity, wave on wave of the violent and the insane, their brains stoked with sporeless analogues of all that was, lean Aryans with their abrogate Semitic chapbook, the Bible, reenacting the dramas and parables therein, and mindless and pale with a longing that nothing save dark's total restitution could appease. These are the Scots-Irish and the German immigrants to America, right? I love this idea, this vision of like the lean Aryans like bearing before them a Semitic chapbook and then reenacting the dramas inside this book, which is a one-sentence history of Anglo-America. We are come to a world within the world. In these alien reaches, these maugre sinks and interstitial wastes that the righteous see from carriage and car, another life dreams. Ill-shapen or black or deranged, fugitive of all order, strangers in every land. The night is quiet, like a camp before battle. The city beset by a thing unknown, and will it come from forest or sea? The Muringers have walled the pale, the gates are shut, but lo, the thing's inside, and can you guess his shape? Where he's kept, or what's the counter of his face? Is he a weaver, bloody shuttle shot through a time warp, a carter of souls from the world's nap? Or a hunter with hounds? I'd underline that. A hunter with hounds. Of course, all of these questions are addressing death. Or do bone horses draw his dead cart through the streets? And does he call his trade to each? Dear friend, he is not to be dwelt upon, for it is by just such wise that he's invited in. The rest indeed is silence. Those are the last words of Hamlet in the play that bears his name. The rest is silence. It has begun to rain. Light summer rain. You can see it falling slant in the town lights. The river lies in a grail of quietude. Here from the bridge, the world below seems a gift of simplicity, curious no more. Down there in grots of fallen light, a cat transpires from stone to stone across the cobbles, liquid black and sown in rapid antipodes over the rain-dark street, to vanish cat and counter-cat in the rifted works beyond. Faint summer lightning far downriver. A curtain is rising on the western world. We started the prologue in the late evening toward dusk. Darkness falls, and now we've gone all the way through, and a curtain's rising on the western world. Daylight's coming. A fine soot, a rain of soot, dead beetles, anonymous small bones. The audience sits webbed in dust. Within the gutted sockets of the interlocutor's skull, a spider sleeps, and the jointed ruins of the hanged fool dangle from the flies, bone, pendulum, and motley. Four-footed shapes go to and fro over the boards. Ruder forms survive. Unlike the darkness of books like Outer Dark, or if you've taken other classes with me, Blood Meridian. There is a hope here and an appreciation for ruined things, for things that are darkened, for things that are dirty, for things and people who are cast off, cast away. And that last sentence, 3 words, the entire prologue is driving at that. Like these are rude forms, but they're surviving forms. They're things that last. They're things that make it. They're not prospering. We don't see many people in this book who are prosperous, at least not in material goods. Most of the material that we see is dirty in some way. It's also like has the dirt and the grit of life to it. It's fecund is a good Suttree word for this. I think ruder forms survive is sort of like, or can sort of like be the thesis for this entire novel. And we'll see that played out in various ways. So the tone is dark. What else would you guys say about the language of the book? Of course, like the prologue is even more heightened than the rest of the book. The language in these first 3 pages is much denser, richer, more liquid than the rest of the book. How else would you characterize that, Ivy?
I feel like it's very full. Like when I'm reading, there's not much that I can kind of leave out when I'm thinking through the meanings of a lot of this.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of it goes back to like our exercise where we're leaving out all the nouns and verbs and whatnot and writing in our own paragraph. It's just very, I guess McCarthy has a way of like just throwing everything in the kitchen sink into these sentences, but it all matters.
Yeah, and it mirrors the beautiful, decaying garbage heap that we're sort of describing. Like McCarthy's finding all of this life and beauty in the passed over, the thrown away, the garbage. Elizabeth?
I was gonna say I feel like it has a lot of care in it. Like it's not necessarily a nice description, but I don't think you can describe a place like this if you don't care about it.
Right.
And I feel like that's kind of throughout. Like you can tell he's writing about a hometown.
Yes. Yeah, there is you see it with clear eyes. You see the phrase warts and all comes to mind, but there is I agree completely. There's care and also like love. Mm-hmm. There's love. I mean, and an obsessive knowledge of something in the way that you guys know your childhood rooms, right? In the way that you know your mother's face, and the way that you know something that's very, very familiar. You've seen it so much that maybe at times it's almost invisible to you. That you're so familiar with it. Yeah.
So when I was reading it, kind of language felt to me kind of grimy, but grimy in the way how you get your boots, you get mud on the boots. It's like I got mud on my boots kind of thing. As well as the presentation, because all the words in the particular language it's using, it's describing very grimy environments and scenes and people, but it's doing it in a way how it's presented is it definitely, again, like you said, out of kind of a love and kind of like isn't that kind of neat or kind of thing.
Yeah, the technique of the book and what the book is on a technical and I would say craft level. The entire technique can be seen in this sentence on page 11. Pardon me, the rag picker that Suttree checks on, the old man that lives on the tater man, yeah, right? So he offers Suttree a tater. Suttree knows he's going to offer 3 times. Suttree has to parcel out. But when the man breaks it open at the bottom of 11, Raw steam rose from the mealy pith of the potato he broke in his hands. Like, I see every baked potato that I've ever split open. That leaps to life for me, that description, the sensuousness of that description, the detailed and precise evocation of the sensual world and the credible rendering of human consciousness and emotion. That's the method of Suttree, that you evoke in a really precise and detailed way your experience, your physical experience of life on this planet, which is in large part about sensation and the senses, smell, taste, touch, sight, right? You like the amalgamation of all of those sensory details and that impression. And Cormac has like captured this stuff. That was one of the things that was so impressive to me. Before, the times I read it before, I've been like the humor, the hilarious dialogue that sounds realer than real. These mostly comic figures, absurd people, but if you grew up blue collar, you grew up in the South, you've known people like this, like they're familiar. This may be 1952, but there they go. There's that guy and there's that guy, right? We've seen these folks. But to mix those two things is so striking to me. This is the technical level. Precise, detailed description, evocation of the sensual world, and then rendering of human consciousness. The way it feels in here, inside your head. The way that your thoughts run from one thing to another. Cormac captures that so beautifully with Suttree. I always think of this passage where he's lying in bed and he's trying to take a nap. He's trying to get to sleep. And then we go from the particular, the outs and the external, into Suttree, inside Suttree's consciousness. And then we're in this place of thought, which mirrors the thought of anyone who's very intelligent and has read a tremendous amount, right? So start in the middle of the page on page 13. He crossed the cabin and stretched himself out on the cot, closing his eyes. A faint breeze from the window stirred his hair. The shanty boat trembled slightly in the river, and one of the steel drums beneath the floor expanded in the heat with a metallic bong. Eyes resting, and then we go inside. This hushed and mazy Sunday, the heart beneath the breastbone pumping, the blood on its appointed rounds, life in small places, narrow crannies. In the leaves, the toads pulse, the delicate cellular warfare and a water drop. A dextrocardiac, said the smiling doctor. Your heart's in the right place. Weather shrunk and loveless, the skin drawn and split like an overripe fruit. Back to the external. He turned heavily on the cot and put one eye to the space in the rough board wall. The river flowing past out there. Cloaca maxima, death by drowning. The ticking of a dead man's watch. Now he's thinking of the man that the rescue boats have found, right? The old tin clock on grandfather's table, hammered like a foundry. I love that we go from he's lying there, he's thinking these thoughts, can't quite get to sleep. He turns over, he looks out between the boards, starts thinking of this man he's seen who's killed himself. Lies there a while, and then he's thinking of his grandfather. The old tin clock on grandfather's table, hammered like a foundry. Leaning to say goodbye in the little room, reek of lilies and incense. He arched his neck to tell to me something I never heard. He wheezed my name. His grip belied the frailty of him, his caved and wasted face. The dead would take the living with them if they could. I pulled away, sat in an ivy garden that lizards kept with constant, leathery slitherings. In my father's last letter, he said that the world is run by those willing to take the responsibility for the running of it. If it is life that you feel you are missing, now it's his father's voice from this letter. If it is life you feel that you are missing, I can tell you where to find it. In the law courts, in business, in government. There is nothing occurring in the streets, nothing but a dumb show composed of the helpless and the impotent. This is, of course, what Suttree has rejected. So, I'll get to the scene with the uncle here in a second. The structure that we follow, have this prologue, we go into Suttree, working, doing his daily thing, catching fish. He comes by, he sees the old rag picker, and he goes home, tries to take a nap, can't quite get to sleep. He starts having the kinds of thoughts that a man who has rejected a life of privilege and who is living among the cast-off would have. We get the understanding of how intelligent he is, how well-read he is. Odd that he's living in the way he is. Odd that he's living exactly like he is. And then the voice of this judgmental father comes through, right? His uncle comes to visit. He has an interaction with a family member who reminds him what his family is like. A family he's rejected, right? He could very easily have a different life, a life very far from here. He's rejected that. I love that sense of when the uncle leaves and they've had this bitter interaction that gets heated, and then there's this kind of like sadness that follows that. Then Sunday, you guys know what it feels like on a Sunday when you're away from your family, maybe alone. There's a I hate to say it, but like you kids say, it's a vibe. The vibes are happening on a Sunday when you're away from your family, right? And you feel that sense of loneliness. And then it's like, I don't want to do this anymore. He gets up, he goes out, and he goes to this place where his friends drink. And then there's a whole different kind of thing. There's even this line about it's kind of like the Sunday blues melt away, like that kind of depression melts away. In order to have that, he has to drink. I've thought about that a lot over the years, what that means to Suttree in this book and the kind of journey of that. You see a man who's rejected family, seems to have rejected his faith. He talks about Mother Church, but doesn't seem like a church-going man, right, anymore. Then he's chosen these friends, and these people like him. They're funny. They're also drunk, right, which is something that happens. Right? Then Suttree goes and gets drunk with them, partakes of the sacrament. Right? The church has sacraments to be a member of the body. Right? You eat, if you're Catholic, you eat the body of Christ, the blood of Christ. If you want to be a member of this body, early times. Right? I love that it's not just, Suttree starts off with a beer. I love that it's not just whiskey, but it's like the worst whiskey anyone's ever heard of. They tried to cut it with Coke, but you can't do it. Eats through the can of Coke, right? It's like, but the badness of it, these men have come to love. Like, they're even like, early times. times. Make your liver quiver, right? And then it becomes like you're kind of in the whole experience of that. You guys, how many of you know what this is like to sit around? I did this when I was a knucklehead college student, right? Sit around with your friends. You don't have enough money for the good stuff. You probably never tasted the good stuff. I hadn't. Couldn't tell the good from the bad. It all tasted like ditch water to me anyway. Ditch water won't get you drunk though. Anyway, so you sit around, you're drinking, and then like the badness of PBR or the badness of night train or the badness of whatever horrible thing you're drinking, like becomes a kind of like pride. Oh, this is terrible, but like it's so terrible. It's so terrible. You gotta love it, right? And there is a camaraderie to that. And you begin to see like, okay, I wouldn't necessarily have chosen the life Suttree chose, but these guys are fun. These guys care about him. These guys might be the cast off and the passed over, but they love Suttree. And Suttree has a place in this community. He has a role in this community. His role is kind of like, well, I don't know if we should do that, right? Because these guys don't have much restraint, but they're colorful, they're very funny, they're interesting, they're in trouble, and they're out to have a good time. Why must they be drinking? I understand that they are. I understand they must be drinking. Why must these guys be drinking? I can't imagine them sitting around drinking coffee, right? They have to be getting messed up.
Well, there's a certain benefits that come with getting absolutely wasted.
Yes, which are?
Which are, you no longer process the environment around them.
Ah, yeah.
They get to just enjoy each other's company and not remember, oh yeah, I'm in so much debt. Oh yeah, my wife hates me. Oh yeah, this is a terrible bar with terrible beer.
Yeah, I forget. Kind of forget my environment. Something you kind of enter this whole other space for a while. You probably shouldn't forget your problems, especially if you have problems you need to deal with. But like getting away from your problems feels good. It can feel very good, Elizabeth.
Everything's like funnier when you're drunk.
Everything's funnier. There's a sense of, I love how like I've been like prodding you about Cormac. I'm like, what do you think of this? And you're like, well, I don't know. I'm like, how about getting messed up? You want hands, nothing but hands. Ivy?
It's almost like there's that like meme phrase where it's like, I drink to forget, but I always remember kind of thing.
Yeah. That's good,
Drinking
actually.
can be an escape, but at the same time, it's like you don't really think about what you're escaping from. You're not escaping from your issues. You're escaping from staying conscious long enough to deal with them.
That's precisely it. You're not escaping your issues. You're escaping from the consciousness of your issues. I used to argue this with a friend. I was wrong. I would say to him, he drank and I didn't. Still don't. But I don't care. I don't care if he drinks or not. I don't care who drinks. But I would say you kind of, most people want to be dead. That's what I would say. Most people want to be dead. He was like, no, I don't think it's true. He's like, I think most people want to be unconscious. And I would be like, nah, dead. And he was like, no, he's like, I think you're missing a key part of this. It's like, dead's different, right? You don't want to be conscious. And consciousness comes with responsibility and problems, all the things, right? Yes, ma'am.
There's also this sense that without drinking, they have really nothing in common. They have no similar grounds to be on, so they have to have that in order to get together.
Very well said. Without drinking, they have nothing in common. In fact, the thing they have in common is their willingness to drink early times. That's what they have in common, that they'll drink this stuff. Which, by the way, I love when Suttree takes off the cap, smoke rises, right? He swirls it, and like actual, talk about the demonic potion, right?
That's rat poison is what that is.
Yeah. Well, see, Cormac's this interesting thing. He didn't give interviews most of his life. And when All the Pretty Horses came out in '92 and made him uber famous and well off financially, he did it. He sat down for an interview at the New York Times, and he said that drinking, he considers alcohol an occupational hazard to writing. And he quit very early on and never went back, right? I think that's true. I've seen alcohol destroy a lot of people who want to be writers. And I think that creative people are clearly more likely to have or be susceptible to addiction of various kinds, right? I don't think I'm blowing your minds. You know, I don't think that's any coincidence that Faulkner and Hemingway, and you just go through the murderer's row of great American novelists, really, really struggled with addiction, alcoholism, mental health. You know, becomes a huge concern for a lot of writers. Of course, the very thing that makes a person, allows a person to do this, makes you susceptible to the kinds of things that Suttree is susceptible to. After Suttree has a night out, this is a little later on where we read for today, he has a night out with these same guys, and then it's funny, they're in the or they're in the bar, right? And Suttree's eating a burger, and then, like, you know, there are these prostitutes in there, and they're making jokes back and forth. Someone farts, and it's funny, and there's all this kind of stuff going on, right? And they're like, "Come go out with us, Suttree," and then Suttree does, and it seems like, yeah, we're gonna have fun, and then it's like the worst. It's one of the most evocative, hungover experiences. I'm like, oh, seems like. He gets arrested. I mean, everything, right? Gets arrested, wakes up feeling terrible, right? Gets into a fight, or not fight, gets into a disagreement with kids, right? Even kids are hostile to you when you're hungover. Gets robbed, yeah, basically, right? I can remember, like, the last time I drank in any kind of way, I was in grad school in Denver. And when you, like, go from, like, a flat place to altitude, like a mile high, you don't have as many capillaries, and you can get drunk way more easily. A friend of mine, we went to this little bar. We're going to have, like, a drink, right? So we ordered screwdrivers, right? Now, the guy behind the bar was someone who would become a PhD student at University of Denver, right? And so as soon as we ordered and, like, we finished our drink, on the house, he just started setting new screwdrivers in front of us. We were like, "Oh my gosh, that's so nice, Gary." And shout out to Gary wherever he is. And then we'd finish those and be like, and then boom, next. So all of a sudden we were not in a good place, right? And and then the next day, I can remember, I was just like, I feel like my body feels like it's a cigarette that someone smoked and then ashed out in hell. I just felt, and I was like, you know what? Like, for me personally, nothing is worth feeling like this. And that was it. That was fall of 2000. Like, that's it for me. I don't want to ever. I'm like under the bridge downtown. I don't want to ever feel like I did that day. I feel awful. So that was as much of that as I needed. If the price of drinking is so steep, right? If like hangovers feel horrible, why do people do it?
I remember hearing about this guy. He did heroin all the time, and he was talking to this like eventual therapist, and he was like, "Oh, my life is awful. My kids don't like me. My family hates me. I have no job. Everything's bad. My life is getting utterly ruined by heroin." And the therapist obviously asked, "Okay, why don't you stop heroin?" And he's like, "Well, when I'm on heroin, none of it matters to me. I just don't care."
It's a reinforcing cycle, obviously. Yes, ma'am.
Basically what they said, escape.
Yeah, you escape.
For me, when I get hungover, sleep way better.
Really?
Yeah, I'll sleep in till like mid-afternoon.
Oh, gosh.
Normally, I wake up 7:30 a.m. every single day without fail.
I was never, maybe, like, these are probably all good things. It turned out for me that hangovers were too bad. And I also could never sleep after I drank. Like, my sleep was horrible. Not only you wake up feeling horrible, you don't sleep. It was just, everything was like, ugh.
My body hurts, but that encouraged me to sleep more.
I'm not able to get there. I'm just like lying there in that in-between hellish state.
It feels like I've done the most intense ab work ever.
Well, you have.
And then
You have. It's called early times.
And then I sleep like a baby.
Wow.
And it's great.
Well,
But I never think about that when I'm actually drinking.
why not?
I just forget.
Why? How?
It doesn't come to my
You're a
brain.
smart person.
I
right?
disagree.
I stand corrected.
I mean, I don't think everything has to be like a form of escapism and like addiction. I think it's also just like cultural.
Sure. Tell me about the cultural part of it. I agree. I don't think everyone who drinks is an addict. That's not true. Some people can have a drink, enjoy wine, whatever, enjoy a wine. They can drink, or like it's like, oh, every now and then we have a bottle of wine, and it's not an addictive thing. It's cultural. Tell us about that.
I mean, like, I don't really drink excessively anymore. I don't really get hangovers, but I have alcohol intolerance. So like, I get like really red when I drink. Like I still drink.
Why?
I don't know. It's like a cultural thing. Like my family, I was raised like it's just like a normal thing.
That hurts you.
Yeah, but like it doesn't have any effect on me. I just get red.
Okay.
Like I don't.
I mean, getting red's not the worst thing.
Yeah.
I personally don't drink. I'm in the same boat as you in that regard. But I have basically all my cousins and stuff. They like whenever we have get-togethers, like they're getting wasted.
Sure.
And I think, and because again, and I obviously I'm one who doesn't, so I get drunk. But there's always this pressure to do it. So there's almost this pervasive kind of.
Why is there? Have you ever thought about why?
I think I have.
Tell me.
Answer to that. I think because it's it's when it's doing this and they're doing it, it's this kind of this fun in-group community thing. It's almost like this ritual of festivity in a way.
Right. And pain.
Yep. And
Early times.
Yeah, they don't think about that though.
Also, I noticed this when I was like, I don't want to. Not because, by the way, don't think that I think I'm like better than people who drink. Don't think that I think that I'm moral or more moral than someone. I don't believe that. I don't think that for a second. I'm saying the physical consequences hurt too bad for me personally. That's it. That's as far as morality goes into it. Now, after I was like, it's not worth it anymore. I noticed I would still like go out with people. I was young. I like to go out and talk to people, have a good time, chase women, the whole thing, right? I noticed that if I ordered just like a Coke or something, I'd just have a Coke, wouldn't hang out. People would be like, my friends. They'd be like, hey, get a beer. Get a beer. Yeah. Have a shot. What? You just gonna drink a Coke? What? And I was like, I'm not gonna drink just because you want me to drink. Like, I'm like, you're just making me not want to drink. But it can rub people the wrong way. People don't want to feel judged. They want to feel like, especially if, say, I'm not saying any of you have a problem. Say if one does have a problem, you don't want to be sitting there with a non-drinker, like, and feel judged by that person, right? It's also like you probably there's a kind of like just animal thing of let's all be on the same level. I don't want to be. We're all impaired. I don't want to be around this like non-impaired person, especially if it's me and I like to have fun with people and mess with my friends and in a playful way, not in a mean way. I'm talking prank sort of stuff, obviously. Gosh, I can't believe how quickly we've run through this. What do we make of Harrogate when we meet Harrogate? We first meet him in the context of a lecherous. Okay, he is like a Shakespearean clown, like in a Shakespearean sense. He's a clown.
Yeah, I was like, well, my first reaction was, he's here.
He's here.
the
Yeah,
man."
yeah, yeah.
That was my first reaction. But then as you got to know him, like he's kind of he does definitely feel like that like Shakespearean con. I was thinking of like characters like Feste and even Falstaff to some extent.
Yeah.
As well, when I was reading him, and he seems so like he's just getting into he's not even trying, but he just gets into he just makes a fool of himself or gets into trouble constantly.
He's a fool.
Yeah.
What is a fool? What is the character of the fool? What does it mean to be a fool? In this sense.
In this sense, I personally feel like it's the person that's accidentally finding themselves in all of these peculiar happenstances.
Well, not accidentally.
Well, it seems accidental.
To the fool.
Yeah. Like everyone else is like, well, I could have predicted that, but they themselves are like,
Well,
wait
yeah,
a minute, how did
because
that
he went to a watermelon patch and effed a watermelon. Not just one, he went back.
And he's like, why'd I get shot?
Yeah. That's right. That is who a fool is. You go to someone's watermelon patch, you have sex with a watermelon. You have to be the kind of person who has that thought.
Right.
It never occurred to me before reading this book. Now it's there. Now it's in my head. And then once you've done that, you're like, you know what? I'm gonna go back. And when you get shot, why you shoot me?
It feels like he's not malicious in his intent.
It's not malicious.
It's just dumb.
It's dumb. Like, he wouldn't get Me Too'd for this, right? But he would get, and the whole thing is he only gets in trouble because the guy shoots him and he feels bad about it, so he has to press charges so he doesn't get in trouble for shooting him.
I think there's an interesting thing about fools where they're absolute idiots, but they also in the text of the story they transcend all of the other characters.
Yes.
Think about all of his friends at the beginning. They are drinking early times.
Early
just
times.
To get to this state that
Yes.
he's in all of the time.
Okay, that's fantastic, right? All of Suttree's friends drink the worst things they can find so they can get to the state of foolishness that Harrogate lives in. Naturally. He's naturally early timed. Just naturally early timed. Why is he lovable? There's something lovable about Harrogate. Maybe it wouldn't be lovable if you knew him personally.
Like Suttree himself, there's a scene in the prison where he describes his eyes as kind of innocent. And he's not, you don't get the feeling that he's an evil character.
No.
He's just that stupid guy that you kind of got to look out for, because if not, he might accidentally kill himself one day.
That's right. He's harmless to everyone but himself, right?
It's like the same vibe as the idiot from Blood Meridian.
Right.
Where it's just because he can't protect himself.
Right.
It's hard to demonize him for his actions, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, he's not a demonizable guy, and even the prison guards feel bad for him.
Yeah.
I love it, when they're like, gosh, man, we can't have you. You're too small and young and dumb to be working on the side of the road. We'll get you a better job. We'll get you a job in the kitchen. Don't want to be in the kitchen.
He's like a toddler.
Who has sex with watermelons.
he's the dude in the friend group where whenever you're recounting stories, you always begin it with "bless your heart."
Yeah. He's
he's that guy where you're just all the stories are about him, and all of them are bless his heart. He's the sweetest guy ever, but holy crap, this dude is stupid.
Yeah. Also, Suttree tells Harrogate, "You look wrong, Gene. You will always look wrong." Because Harrogate thinks I can run away. Suttree's like, not where there are people. You look wrong.
Probably not where there's watermelons either.
Yeah, not when there are watermelons, right? And the thing is, it's like Suttree's not a cruel person. He's not trying to hurt Harrogate's feelings. He's not trying to injure his feelings. He's trying to tell him something. You can't. I guess he's trying to keep him from getting killed, right? And the whole thing, oh my gosh, what a great scene. Harrogate hears about the prison ring. I want a prison ring. Gets the coin, someone bores a hole in it, sits there tapping, and then this psychopath threatens him. And then, like, there's a scene where, like, Harrogate jerks his cover, give me that. And Harrogate's like, right? It's that whole, like, it's like a Yoda move, right? It's like, woo.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most like evocative moments in this section of the reading is when, like, after that happens.
Oh my gosh.
He taps on it and then he looks and sees if he's noticed, and then he goes back to it and then he checks again.
I love that. I love it. It's tap, tap, tap. Tap, 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 tap. And then Slusser just wakes up with murder in his eyes. Give me that. And you're like, oh my gosh. Suttree stands up for Harrogate, though. Right? And Suttree, like, feels, like, that line about he feels his stomach plunging as he's doing this, because he knows, like, I'm getting ready to tangle with an absolute maniac, but I'm doing it, like, he can't keep from... And the purpose of a character like Harrogate, when paired with Suttree, is it makes us have an even more favorable opinion of Suttree. He's looking out for literally the little guy. He can't help it. Like, we see, like, oh, you hang out with these degens, as they say on Letterkenny, but you're a good guy. You want to help. You can't get through to Jean. My favorite thing about the entire scene is Harrogate and the ring, and then this Greek battle that breaks out, and people go to the hole, and and then after all of that, Suttree's trying to go to sleep. Tap, 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 tap. And Suttree's like, Gene, dude. And then at that point, he's like, okay, I'll quit. Like, the fool is able to take things farther than even, like, stupidity will take you. Like, there's a kind of, you just go even farther as a fool. Also, in Shakespeare, the fools stand outside of the community, and they stand outside of time. And the fools, I'm thinking in particular of the fool in Lear, is able to say things that no one else can say with impunity. Jester's privilege, precisely so, right? The fool can criticize power because power thinks he's just a fool. It's like, it's like if a toddler tries to start a fight with you, like, or a toddler punches you. You don't take whatever. And so the fool can speak truth to power, right? And is not going to be destroyed for it. And he's anti-threatening, Harrogate is. In the section we'll read for Tuesday, one of my favorite passages in the book, Harrogate gets out of prison. He immediately goes looking for Suttree. Where's Suttree? Where's Suttree? Do you know Suttree? Do you know Suttree? And he ends up going to the rag picker who lives under the bridge. And right, there are two ends to the bridge. So you have this side of the bridge and this side of the bridge, right? You can live under one side or you can live under the other, right? So most people, I think, if you saw someone living under a bridge who wasn't a troll, you would say, you'd have real empathy. Like, this person's in a bad situation. When Harrogate comes upon the rag picker and he sees how he's living under the bridge, he's got some plywood set up, Harrogate's response is, oh, you've got it fixed up real slick in here, don't you? Right? Harrogate thinks, like, it's like the meme, dudes will see this and say, hell yeah. Well, that's Harrogate's response to the man living under the bridge. And then Harrogate says, well, what if I lived on the other side of the bridge? We could be neighbors, right? And then the rag picker says, would you get the son of a bitch in hell away from me and just leave me alone, right? He's like, God, I don't know what's wrong with you, and I don't want to know. Get away from me. There's such humor in Harrogate, and there's such vulnerability in him. And the odd coupling of Suttree and Harrogate is just fantastic. big question, and the last one I'll have time to ask you today. Suttree tells Harrogate that he looks wrong and he'll always look wrong. There's something wrong with all of us. All of us have baggage, stuff, whatever. We have physical conditions and psychological conditions and defects of personality. We're critters. No one is perfect. We all got stuff. What's wrong with Suttree? He has a lot of talent. He's very bright. He could walk to his parents' home and his entire life would be different. What's wrong with Suttree? What's his problem? Do you guys have a sense of that yet? Do you feel like that's still kind of hanging out there? Yes.
I think he kind of gives up before he even really starts. He has the most clearest head about everything. He understands privilege. He understands lack of privilege. And because of that view, he thinks he can come to the, like, okay, this is going to be the conclusion if I do this. This is going to be the conclusion if I do this. And just doesn't. So to the outside world, he just looks ambivalent.
Have you known someone who, okay, there are people who don't recognize in some sense that life is a game. They don't understand, and they're just constantly losing. They don't even understand they're inside of the game, and they're just getting hammered, right, by it. And then there's the person that is trying to play the game, and they're not any good at it. And there's the person who's like doing pretty well. And then there's a very particular kind of person who refuses to play. If the person did play, he might be like the best player you've ever seen. But he refuses to play. Now, that also costs you something. Not playing the game costs you something. Playing it poorly costs you something. Playing it well costs you something. Not realizing costs you something. But Suttree is refusing to play. What are the consequences of that? Of refusing to play a game that you're in?
You kind of automatically, like, fall to the wayside. Like, it kind of, like the quote, like, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Suttree's over here, and he doesn't have the ball. He doesn't want the ball.
Right.
Like, but he's still in the game. It's basically like, we're playing basketball 5-on-4. And he's just like, yeah, you guys go on, you got it. Like, I don't need to play, it's fine. But really, it's like, you're missing out. Like, there's so many opportunities here.
Right.
And you're just kind of, you're just doing fuck all in the corner.
Yeah. Elizabeth?
He also completely like cuts off his family, and I think we see that the most when his mom comes to visit him.
Ooh.
And she's crying, and he starts crying too, and instead of facing it, he just walks away.
Yeah, and a great example of that. And before that happens, and this is very telling about Suttree, before that happens, he walks in, he sees his mom is sitting there, and he starts to backpedal, and the guard says, you get your ass over there, right? Not because, like, it's regulation, but the guard recognizes, your mother came here to see you.
And it's Christmas, right?
It's Christmas. Go set your ass down, because it's the right thing to do, right? And so we see this impulse in Suttree. No, I want to reject everything. I want to, live in this. Yeah, I want to live in this outland. I want to live in this garbage heap, in this interesting garbage heap. So there's a sense of playing at something. Have you ever hung out with people you didn't belong with? That you didn't belong with, but but you became part of that community regardless? Like, you became one of them, even though you knew you didn't belong there, and they kind of accept you because they're like, oh, you shouldn't be with us, and we kind of like that. We like that you are here amongst us. You're like the odd person in this community. And most like cliques, little friend groups, they won't welcome someone who doesn't quite fit. Right? They welcome people who fit. They don't welcome someone who doesn't quite fit. They'll go to war with that person. The person who doesn't fit at all, though, they may get welcomed in. It's like they're such an outsider to the group. They don't even speak the same language, and so they're like, it's like the novelty. It's like, oh, well, it's kind of great that this person is, and they'll like let that. It's kind of like it's a kind of tokenism, actually. It's like this is a token X to this community. This is our whatever, right? That's an interesting dynamic. Are there other things you would say at this point? And it's early times yet, but are there other things you'd say about what is wrong with Suttree? Yeah.
He mentions that his brother was born stillborn. He mentions about how like his brother is like up in heaven, but he's still down here in hell.
Yeah, it's very interesting. There's another Suttree. There's a doppelganger that, and it's interesting that Suttree carries so much bitterness about that, right? He's like, they take one of you home in a basket, and the other they take in a box. Yeah, Elizabeth.
I think some of the bitterness is from the fact that his family never talked about it. Like when he asked his uncle about it, his uncle's like, "Who told you that?
Yeah.
Did I tell you that?"
Right.
And it's kind of like when you, I don't know, I guess when you like bury those things, they have an effect on people.
Yes, and Suttree's real animus, his real anger, seems to be against his father, who, by the way, we never see in the book, ever. We hear that voice when Suttree's trying to take a nap. We never confront the father. We never see the father. Never appears in the book. And so there is a hatred. And he's like, he tells this to his uncle. It's like, my mother is a housekeeper, right? And, my father doesn't see her. He sees her as beneath him, right? There's the insinuation that she's very beautiful, and that's the reason that, the father permits her, but that she's like a lower caste. She comes from like a lowly people. Blood will tell is something that, very patrician folks will say, and that his mother was not from the same class as his father, and his father always resented her, looked down on her. And so when Suttree came along, then you look down on the kid to some degree because she came from this woman you considered beneath you, which is an effed up way to think about people, obviously. But Suttree is smart enough to understand that there's this dynamic and seems to be, it's a baby with the bathwater thing, right? It's like you understand that your father is unjust in his assessment of people. There are better and worse ways of dealing with that. And then there is just flip the entire table over and storm out, right? I'm not going to see any of my family. I'm going to turn my back on all of them. I'm going to turn my back on the kind of people I would normally be around, right? To live with the Harrogates of the world. I'd rather be around a fool than my father. We'll start there next time.